small, lightweight, and portable. These are three main features that are super important to me when choosing a camera. As a solo camera operator who operates mostly in the outdoor sports world, I find that nearly 90% of the time I am reaching for the lightest and most compact full-frame camera package that will do the job, as I have to account for the weight of my camera gear while I'm navigating through the same environments that I'm capturing. But this video isn't about my 90% use case. It's about the other 10%, when bigger is actually better. If you're new to the channel, my name is Casey Bryant Jones. By day, I manage the Ottawa Kayak School at Wilderness Tours, and in my free time, I'm an adventure sports photographer, aspiring filmmaker, and slowly growing this YouTube channel. As for this video, it isn't sponsored. I've purchased all of this equipment with my own money, and so these are my opinions. I should start by providing some context. This past year, I started filming weddings again, and I also had the opportunity to begin shooting more long-form content. And three downsides of my mirrorless cameras have presented themselves through this process. The first is that I shoot outside a lot, and long days of shooting outside in the bright sun makes monitoring on small LCD screens especially difficult. This is really relevant for those of us who shoot on Sony mirrorless cameras whose LCD screens are lackluster at best. I end up using the viewfinder of my camera more often than not in these scenarios so I can accurately monitor my footage. Number two is the recipe of long days, small batteries, and powerful cameras. This is the recipe for less than ideal battery life, just in case you didn't know. And that comes from long takes and always leaving the camera on so you're ready to catch those can't miss moments. The last is micro jitters. Even with incredible stabilization, there is something to be said about smoother handheld footage that comes from heavier cameras. So the solution to all of these problems for me came with some very simple parameters. I wanted to add a bigger, brighter monitor. I wanted a battery that could power both the monitor and the camera all day. And I wanted a top handle and the ability to disassemble the camera rig back to its most essential parts: the camera, the battery, and the lens. And this is what I've come up with. I hope you're enjoying the video, and if you are, please consider hitting the subscribe button. I think it's right about there. 70% of people watching this channel actually are not subscribed. So hitting that subscribe button down there, that's going to help me out a lot if you would. Okay, we should get back to it. If you're like me, camera gear has to be easy. It has to be straight to the point, or otherwise I won't use it. And I think I did a really good job of selecting pieces for this build out that allows this camera to be functional not only as a mirrorless camera as it is now, but then also as something more along the lines of a cinema rig, I guess. But I have a lot of the functionality once this thing is built out, and it doesn't take that long to do so. So we'll go ahead and do this in real time to find out how efficient this really is. So we'll take a look at the main camera body that I'm using. This is my Sony A1. It lives permanently inside this small rig cage because I work outside, and this thing helps protect the camera body if I were to drop it. So I like having this on there all the time. It is the first generation of the small rig cage, so there's no Arca Swiss plate built into the bottom of the cage. So I'm using a PGY Tech quick release plate. And the other thing that lives on the small rig cage permanently is a NATO rail up top. And that NATO rail is used to attach my top handle. And this top handle, you'll hear a little small click. And that is a spring-loaded retention system. So if this finger wheel loosens up, the actual handle doesn't slide off. But this basic rig right here, this basic setup, I've been able to capture a lot of really cool handheld kayaking shots because of this top handle. And so shout out to Mark Bone for his video that kind of introduced me to the whole idea of using top handles. And I'll go ahead and link that up in the top corner of the video. But kind of moving on, we need to figure out how we're going to attach everything together. So we'll set the camera to the side for just a moment. And the next piece that we're going to grab is the small rig V-mount base plate. And this is a pretty simple piece, but it's awesome. It's actually super easy to use and super quick to use. There's a couple of levers here, and this lever here is going to allow us to extend or bring back the V-mount plate closer to the actual camera body where it attaches here. I'm going to go ahead and extend it completely and lock it into place. And then I'm going to look at the front of the base plate here, and we're going to slide the camera into place, centering it on the base plate, and then we're going to lock it into place. Now, this is the first generation or the Mark I version of the A1, so it doesn't have a tilty flippy screen, but what we're going to do is flip the screen out. That way we have the ability to monitor our settings and just have a second LCD screen. And once we've done that, we're going to rotate the V-mount plate up into place, and it's not touching, but almost touching the LCD screen. So there's just the slightest bit of gap here, and we're going to use this little wheel here to lock it into place. And as I lay this up on its side, you can see that the rig is coming together quite nicely already. So as we set that camera to the side, the next piece that we need to talk about is the V-mount battery. And I'm using a mini V-mount battery from Newer. This is a 99 watt battery, and there's a few reasons why I picked this battery in particular. The first reason is the LCD screen on the back. I really like being able to hit the power button and get a really good idea of where the power draw is coming from and how much battery I actually have left. So that's a big one for me. It also doesn't hurt that it looks super cool too, but that's not the reason why you buy everything. It's the reason I buy most things though. But in reality, it's the actual functionality and the layout of the battery that is the reason why I selected it. On the left side of the battery, which happens to be where the USB-C in for power delivery on the A1 is located, there is a USB-C and USB-A port, which can be used as outs and for charging purposes. So I'll be using a cable to connect the USB-C to USB-C on my A1 for power delivery. And then if I turn it over to the right side, there's a D-tap out as well. And that one's a little stickier as I open it. But the D-tap out will connect to a dummy battery on the right side of my monitor, and that just so happens to be where the battery slot is on the monitor that I use. So I chose this battery based off of the functionalities that I needed for the pieces of equipment that I use. So as we bring the camera back over, we're going to go ahead and slide that camera battery into place, or the V-mount battery into place. Big thud. And now we have a camera rig coming together fairly quickly. It's actually looking pretty sweet. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to attach a monitor up here. And as you'll see, there's a little locking mechanism on the top handle here, which I really like. And so I'm going to go ahead and rotate this back up. And the monitor I'm using is the Atomos Ninja V. And this is definitely overkill for what I'm using it for currently, but I previously had used this monitor for a 6K usage case for the Panasonic S5 Mark I, and it just was laying around, and so this is the monitor I own, and this is the one I will be using. So it is a little overkill, but I already owned it, so there's no reason not to use it. So the entire rig is pretty much together now as we lay it on its side. This is kind of what it looks like, which is pretty awesome. And we'll grab the top handle here and rotate it back up again. And now we need to connect it. And with cables, it's kind of like everything else. You get what you buy. And I've had really good luck with a couple of brands, and they are Alvin's cables and Ugreen. And so the two cables that I'm going to pick up first here, I'll go ahead and pull them all over, but the first one will be a coiled HDMI cable, which comes from Alvin's Cable. And I really like this coiled cable because it just keeps everything super clean. So we'll do HDMI in, and then we'll open the port on the side of the A1 and insert it there. And that's our clean setup. You could use little Velcro strips to go ahead and pull that in closer if you so desired. The next thing that we're going to do is grab our dummy D-tap battery. So our dummy NPF, we'll slide that into place. That is now in place. And then we'll rotate the D-tap back and plug it in. And so now we have that D-tap nice and tight and in place. As we do this, we're going to actually take the USB-C right angle. We're going to rotate that through and loop it through the opening underneath our LCD screen and put that into our A1. And what happens now is there is a little bit of illumination that happens there, and our battery is now starting to show that it's receiving some power draw. And so if I were to turn this on now and I take off the lens cap and turn on the monitor, we are now ready to shoot, which is pretty amazing. Now, to be perfectly honest with you, I am very happy with the way that this turned out and the amount of functionality that this little build really adds to this camera. And if you found this video helpful, you may want to watch this one up here. And if you haven't considered subscribing yet, the button's right down here. Consider doing that, and we'll see you in the next one.